Tina, and I lead the client solutions team for the consumer business in the MENA region. And welcome to TikTok Qahwa. In TikTok Qahwa, we're inviting our guests to talk about their stories, experiences, and plans for Ramadan. And with that, I'd like to introduce the head of media, digital, and commerce for Unilever. Hi, Tina.
Hello.
Before we dig in, we want to just deep dive a little bit about your bio, and in true TikTok fashion, we would like you to tell us a little bit about yourself in 80 characters.
So I'm a working mother of 3. I like to spend my time working during the day, but I usually have cycling and dancing. On TikTok, I call it my playground because this is where I literally spend time and have fun without being judged, where on other platforms I'm more serious and work related. So there you go.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Within your portfolio, what are your favorite brands in the context of Ramadan?
Well, typically in the context of Ramadan, everybody would say food brands. So Knorr definitely would come on top of mine. But to be very honest with you, Ramadan is not only about food and beverage. And for me, I have a lot of brands that are very relevant to Ramadan that we work with. I think of home care product. I think of Jif. I think of Comfort, Omo. And why I think of them is very simple. While people are very focused on what happened during iftar or during suhoor, people forget that after that, there's a massive chaos that needs to be cleaned up. And this is why a lot of other brands are more relevant to Ramadan as well, other than food and beverage.
It's basically the real side of Ramadan.
The hidden side of Ramadan, let's put it that way.
So Tina, this year, our value proposition for Ramadan is to belong differently. We really do believe that at this time of year, it gets very cluttered, and brands do have to show up in a different, unique way on the platform. What do you think about that?
If it was different, I would be surprised because TikTok is known to be very different from any other platform. This is why I would expect TikTok to belong differently, and it actually suits your platform very well. And you're right, the fact that brands need to look very different during Ramadan is true, and they need to be differentiated from each other is also very true. How and where is going to be the trick, and is going to be the question or the answer that every brand needs to find in order for them to be differentiated in such a cluttered period. But I'm looking forward because I'm sure that a lot of creativity will be done during that period.
At TikTok, we really do believe that belonging differently requires a good story that captivates the audience. In your opinion, what makes a good story?
I know that every story usually requires a character, a hook, a start, an ending, something to captivate the audience. I understand that. But I think nowadays, a lot of things have changed. So I truly believe that a main character is no longer needed. I think everybody can become a main character in a story as long as it flows naturally and it says something that talks to a specific audience. So from a brand point of view, when you look at audiences and you see what are their interests, and as long as you're building on the interest of the audience, then automatically your story will flow naturally with them. Let's take Ramadan cooking. You'll see a lot of story about dishes, about stuff on how to make the perfect setup for your iftar and all of that. It's a typical story that is an interest during that period. How you define it, what you put in it, what are the things that you need to tell your audiences will make a big difference on how you actually elevate your brand and make it actually come out in a way that needs to be received to your audience in a certain manner. So for me, we're out of the old days of having a sequence of events that leads you to the end of a story. It's about just looking on naturally what happens during the day with people and how you can integrate your brand within that.
That's a very interesting way to look at it. And how do you see TikTok playing a role in that?
Actually, TikTok plays a perfect role into that. The good thing about the platform is it's a natural way of delivering content. So today, the way you put in the stories or you deliver the content is very natural, and it's very differentiated from any other platform. So for me, when I sit a lot on TikTok, and I do sit a lot on TikTok, you see quite a lot of things or interests that are they're very diversified. So you can start with home cleaning, to arrangement, to food, to life hacks, to whatever. So it's very diversified. And in every element, you can actually fit in a way of delivering a story in a very natural way.
Basically, that way is showing up as their true selves, and also in order for the brand to stand out within the clutter during magic moments or seasonalities such as Ramadan.
You have to be honest and true. And you tapped onto something very important, because faking it or just trying to squeeze it in within a certain context is actually what will make it probably not stand out. And if it flows naturally within the feed when people are scrolling and it comes within a certain context, that is where it's going to make it stand out or make it more watched. Let's put it that way. Because for me, these days, standing out is not about an ad that wins awards. Well, definitely people like to win awards, but what I'm saying is it's for it to enter the house and the homes of our consumers in a very natural way, for it to become so supernatural that people, whenever they see the brand, they automatically relate it to something that happens daily with them.
Let's talk a little bit about your campaign in 2022 and what are you guys planning to do differently this year?
I would say 2022 and before, because they were very typical, done typically in that manner. So usually you get a campaign idea and then you create a film around it, and then from that film you derive quite a lot of different adaptations. I think what we're doing differently this year is we're trying to co-create on each platform an idea that fits the platform itself. So rather than taking an idea where you create a TV spot and then you cut it down into different actually views, what we're doing this year is we're talking to TikTok and to other platforms and saying, okay, what fits more from a content, from a design point of view? We have definitely the idea, then we kind of like co-created with the platform itself in order to come up with something that is more relevant to them and to their audience, rather than something that is just adapted to the rest of the platform. So I think this is a big thing for us this year. And this is going to be a differentiator, because you're not going to see the same thing everywhere. You're going to see a very relevant cut of an idea in every platform differently.
I'm going to share with you a little bit of statistics about how our audiences behave during the planning phase of Ramadan. And let me know how Unilever brands can actually leverage those data points in their campaigns. So to start off with, when preparing for Ramadan, 85% spend more time watching cooking videos than before.
Right. I'm assuming Knorr can come in here. Actually, there's more than one brand that can come in. From Knorr point of view, we work a lot on making sure that we give recipes. We prepare them with special people or chefs or normal people that can actually showcase a quick way of actually preparing some dishes. Planning is very important in Ramadan, because usually people don't have a lot of time to prepare for, especially working women or working men, if they're also cooking. They don't have time to enough time to prepare for iftar. So what happens usually, they pre-plan everything. So giving them tips on how to get their vegetable, get their food, prepare them, have them ready, so that in the evening it's a quick mix and cooking, and then get the plate or the table ready. But works as well that other than Knorr, in the preparation as well, home care products work on how to make sure that everything is not as disinfected with germs and all of this, especially these days with all the illnesses, washing your hands very well before preparing the food, with Lifebuoy and all of that. So quite a lot of brands can come in the planning session. It doesn't have to be only food. It just needs to come very naturally, as I said, very naturally into the planning process and the reality of things, rather than a fake way of actually incorporating the brands. So you wash your hands, you prepare your food, you do your supermarket list, you clean the area that you're gonna work in, you set up your table and all of that. So there's quite a lot of brand that comes in during the preparation phase.
I'm going to move away from brands and from the Unilever world and focus a little bit on our audiences and how our community shows up on the platform. And with that, we've seen so many communities creating different topics of interest around what the passion points that they have, and also how they indulge in talking about them in different ways. For example, things like food talks, things like personal care and beauty topics such as hair talks, beauty talks, we even have nail talks to that extent. And with that, how do you see your brands utilizing those different talks on the platform to show up differently during Ramadan?
Ramadan is the holy months of Ramadan is a topic of itself when it comes to food. Then you look at stuff that the topic will change into stuff that are relevant to what you need to prepare, how you fast, what are the things you break fast with, how do they operate. So there's quite a lot of topics that relate very specifically to Ramadan that can create a specific talk. When it comes to these talks, we try to bring the relevant products into the conversation seamlessly. That will help make people's life better and improve it during a holy month that is very special in their heart.
You tapped also into something very interesting in how relevant the content comes in from those communities. Do you usually find those communities that are organically present on the platform very insightful and gives you insights for the brands to build on? For example, the way they create recipes, they can come up with new recipes, or the way they take care of themselves. Do they actually take those pieces of organic content into consideration when creating themselves?
Of course. So for me, it's very important because if you want to end up being genuine and true, you have to take into consideration the people that create the content. And quite a lot of the work happened with content creators, so we kind of collaborate together. You will rarely see lately a piece, unless it is done through research and it's a global campaign and all of that. You would rarely see a piece that comes in and just gets delivered to a content creator and say, please have this, just please recreate this moment. It's very rare these days because, as you rightfully said, the content creator themselves are very different also between one and the other. So you can't give them the same piece of information to be delivered the same way across 5 or 6 content. Everybody needs to personalize it because they also need to be true to the audience they serve or the audience that watch them. So I can give the idea generally of what messaging we need to give, but then it gets personalized with every content creator. So definitely we take them into consideration. Definitely we see what's actually trending, what is working, what do people look for. We look at the insight that we get from TikTok as well, but we also look at the insight that we get from the content on the audience that they serve, because it is very different one from the other, and then we adapt accordingly and we work very closely with them.
So let's take it a little bit personal, and in the spirit of storytelling, I'm gonna give you a question for you to ask me, or a story for you that you want me to talk about.
It's more of a question in the spirit of Ramadan. Do you have brands that only work with you during Ramadan?
No, not actually. So the way we've seen it work is we have brands that are more or less active on the platform across the year, but the way they show up on Ramadan is very differently. They try as much as possible belong differently, but in a way that they know that our community will actually respond to them and interact with them, be it in different ways. We have different ways that brands show up on the platform, be it even if it's a one-way conversation or it's a two-way conversation, for example, like missions and the way they actually interact or spend time with the brand. So what we've seen is more during those peak seasons or seasonalities is that brands try to create something, a story that allows the audiences to spend more time with it versus just translate a message.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
What is the story that you would want to actually share with our listeners today?
A story. Not a story. I will give an advice.
Even better.
I've learned in my very, very long career that the best way to be able to make sure that whatever content you work on is actually content that delivers and that converts. You really have to understand the platforms that you're on. And the best way to understand the platforms that you're on is to be on them. I am very surprised now that there are many people, for example, who keep talking about TikTok but don't have an account, which for me is very surprising because you cannot understand what needs to be delivered on a platform unless you're on it and experiencing it yourself. So you know the difference of what works and what doesn't work, because you are an audience as well. And you know what works for you and what doesn't work for you, although you cannot generalize, but you have an understanding. So for me, my biggest advice, which is, it's not an advice for my team, it's actually mandatory. For all the team that works in the Department of Digital Marketing, Media and Commerce, they have to have personal presence on all the platforms so that they can experience it and that they have a point of view. So they need to have a point of view. So for you to be able to do whatever you need to do, you need to have a point of view, and that point of view needs to be genuine and authentic.
Thank you so much for your time today. You really proved to us that we can have a very much insightful and authentic storytelling over a cup of coffee. We loved having you at TikTok Qahwa, and I hope that you loved our Qahwa today.